hair is a mess. Hello, YouTube. I am Wheels on Wheels and welcome to episode 2 of Wheels Workshop. I've decided to make this a series. You would have seen in the last video me working on the Volkswagen Fox. I've got a few family members who want some work doing on their cars, so I've decided to make it a series. Why not? So today we have this Citroen Xsara Picasso in beautiful brown. It is endearingly known in the family as the baked potato, and unfortunately has developed a serious knocking noise from the suspension. I haven't really heard this knocking noise recently, so I'm about to go on a quick test drive just to see really how bad it is. I have already done an inspection underneath, and I can see that the rear bushes for the front wishbones are completely mashed. So I'm assuming that has something to do with it, but we won't know really for sure until I start stripping everything apart. I've already got some wishbone bushes on order, but for now I'm just going to go on a quick test drive just to see how bad it really is. So if you like this kind of content and you enjoy this series, please do leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. And if you have any suggestions for the kind of things you want to see, leave a comment down below. Right, let's go for the test drive. Well, hey, off we go. No knocking so far. If there is any knocking, which I expect there will be, I hope the microphone picks it up. Yeah, so far so good. I can hear a bit of a knocking. Oh, wow, okay. No, there is a knocking. That was just a slight drain we went over and it knocked. Oh. Okay, it doesn't take much to upset it. That's a very smooth road. Let's choose a less smooth road to go down. You can hear it knocking right now. Oh, I hope you can hear that, guys. Yeah, that's quite a severe knock. Something sounds very, very broken. Okay, this definitely needed looking at. There's all sorts of different noises. There's like clicking and clunking. Wow, it's definitely coming from that front left. There's so many different noises going on, guys. Right, let's get this back to the garage and let's take a look. So here's the car now in the workshop. As you would have seen a moment ago in the initial test drive video, the car's feeling a bit sorry for itself. So we need to investigate some of the noises that are going on. They mostly seem to be happening on the front left side here. So, what the hell? That scared me. Yeah, so this noises seem to be coming from the front left side mostly. So we're going to start by jacking up the front left side and just tearing it all apart and just seeing where the fault lies. It's worth mentioning at this point, guys, that I am not a professional in any way, shape or form, so don't copy what I do. But if you do copy what I do, it's at your own risk, basically. Right, so I'm going to start off by removing the wheel, of course. So, pulling off the wheel trim, and we will buzz off those 4 wheel bolts. Pop the wheel under the car. Alrighty then. I realised what I should have done is check for any play whilst the wheel was on. In fact, I'm going to do that. I think that's okay. No up and down play. So that's good. The wheel bearing's okay. That don't look right. So guys, I've been taking a look inside the passenger side wheel well, and I've found a few potential issues. One very minor one is there's a split in the rubber boot for the Droplink there. A more major one though is the condition of that anti-roll bar bushing. If I can get you a good shot of that. That is the bushing right there, and it is completely mashed. So guys, I haven't been able to ascertain what the noise is for 100% yet. There's a very good chance that it's that rear wishbone bushing because it is very, very worn. Although I can't replicate the knocking noise. So I'm going to start taking that apart because it needs to be done anyway. Yeah, that's it. I'll just get started. So to do this, I'm going to be removing this bolt and doing that pinch bolt there for this ball joint. And finally, undoing the 2 bolts that hold the problematic rear wishbone bush in. Okay, this appears to be an 18mm, and maybe I can do it with my big impact gun. It's too easy. That's a big bolt. That's the first job done. Well, not first job. I wish. So this one here is the pinch bolt that holds the ball joint to the hub, and it looks like it's an E-Torx or a female Torx. Okay, that's an E16. That seems a bit loose. Let's try an E14. Perfect. E14 it is. And on the other side, you have a nut. So you need to counter hold that nut and remove that bolt. Okay, and then you counter hold the other side with a 16mm spanner or socket, whichever you prefer. That is me doing it up stupidly. There we go. That is one pinch bolt removed. Okay, so now we actually need to remove the ball joint from the hub. The best way to do that is probably just with a hammer. This calls for a bit of card to protect my floor. Oh, no. This calls for a bit of WD-40. So the part of the hub that the ball joint goes into is separated into 2 parts. So where it separates there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically use a strut spreader tool. I'll show you what one of them is in a second, and that will allow me to spread the 2 bits of the hub apart so that the ball joint here can just drop down. Annoyingly, I can't find my strut clamp spreader tool, so I'm just going to do the old-fashioned way, pushing in a flathead screwdriver and prying them apart like this. Ow. Yeah, did I mention don't do this at home? Or do, but just, you know, don't blame me for anything. That should be enough. So, as you can see guys, what I've done is I have just tapped in a crowbar right here in between the hub and the wishbone, which has, as you can see, dropped it down. It has dropped it down successfully, so there's just a little bit more to go yet. Shouldn't be too long. There we go. Right, ball joint has been removed from the hub. It's important to mention, if you are doing this at home, again, don't follow my instructions. But if you do, I'm not reliable. Something to mention though is this drive shaft here. And I know this because I've done this before by mistake. This drive shaft has no retaining clip. It's not bolted into here at all. So you can literally just pull it out by mistake and all the gearbox oil will drip out. So try and make sure that this drive shaft is pushed inwards at all times. Don't go pulling it right out because now obviously the control arm is removed. There's nothing to stop the strut going out, as you can see. Make sure you prevent the drive shaft from coming out. Now that I have removed the control arm ball joint from the hub, I think I can begin to see how bad the control arm bushing actually is. So there should be a reasonable amount of resistance on this, but I can move this up and down with absolute ease, with absolutely no with no trouble at all. I can move this up and down, and if I move it up and down, probably can't hear it on the camera, but it does clunk. So next thing to do is to remove the two bolts holding the bushing in. So there is a 13mm and a 16mm bolt that hold it in place. So I'm just going to grab my impact and undo those both. There's that tiny little screw. So it looks as though there's a nut holding it on the other side. There does appear to be a nut holding it on from the other side. So I'll just get a spanner to counter hold that. Okay, so it looks like it's a 16mm nut on the other side as well. How to hold that. Grab the nut so it doesn't go missing. Screw it onto the end. And now our wishbone should be somewhat free. There we go. And that is one wishbone removed. So I'm just looking at the bushing now, and it is completely cracked all the way around. I mean, there is still some tension in it, but it doesn't take a lot of pressure for me to do that, and it shouldn't move in that direction very much at all. So I'm going to leave that bushing as it is for now until we get the new one, so that I can remember which way it goes, because obviously there's a certain orientation. So I'm going to leave it for now. Just looking at the other bushing, these are usually quite solid bushings, so these don't usually fail. Seems pretty good. Whereas these have voids in them to allow movement. But I don't know if you can see, but that I could pretty much, I think, turn that all the way around 180 degrees if I wanted to. I want to, but I don't, because I want to retain the orientation that's in, so I remember which way it goes around. You can also check the condition of the ball joint, which is okay. There's no in and out movement, so what you want to check for is sort of in and out movement. There is actually, yeah, there is in and out movement on that ball joint. That needs replacing. That might not be the clunking, but it doesn't take a lot when under pressure for a ball joint like this to start clunking, and I can feel that clunks in and out. So that has in and out play on that ball joint. That actually could be part of the problem, but again, it needs replacing. So I will get a new one of them as well. So I've sort of checked all of the other ball joints, the track rod end, the Droplink, and they seem okay. There's nothing that I can see that would cause the level of clunking we were having earlier. But I can see that rear wishbone bushing doing that. Again, there is play in this ball joint, which could contribute to it. Could be one of the many clunks. So yeah, I will replace that because it does need replacing. They're not very expensive. They're quite cheap, and you can see they're just 3 bolts to replace it. So whilst we've got it off, might as well do it. So I will join you guys back when I have the parts.
Several days later.
Okay, it's a new day in the Wheelz workshop, as you can tell by the fact my hair is now shorter and my attire has changed. I just wanted to mention, I noticed there was flickering before on the video, so I apologise for that. I've tweaked the settings and it looks a bit better, so hopefully this footage comes out a bit better for the rest of the video. Right, so I have a load of parts. I have some genuine Citroen Peugeot bushes. Look like that. They're also known as P bushes because they're shaped like the letter P, I suppose. I've also got a new ball joint, bottom ball joint, if you can see that, because this one, I don't know if I mentioned this before, has actually a bit of play. And also, I think I did mention this before, I've got a new Droplink, because the Droplink that's fitted has a split in the boot. So I thought I might as well do it while we're in here. So what I'm going to try and do is remove the rear bushing using this bearing puller. It probably won't work, but I'm going to try it, and if it doesn't, I'm going to use a grinder to just cut it off because these are pressed on really tight. So let's get started. I almost know this isn't going to work, but it's worth a try. See what happens. Yeah, it's just pulling the bushing to pieces. Nope, nope, nope. I knew that wasn't going to work. Oh well. Time to crack the grinder out. Goggles, safety first. Do you know what? I might even put some gloves on as well. You may have noticed in the last episode I was wearing one single glove, but I found 2 now and they're matching. Right, let's cut this old crap bushing off if we can. Perhaps if we turn it on. All right. So we're most of the way through the bushing there, so I just need to keep going. Okay, so I've made a cut there, as you can see. Just need to be really careful that you don't actually end up cutting the control arm itself. In hindsight, it might have just been easier to buy new wishbones, to be honest, with new bushings. But this is what we've done now, so I'm going to do it. Oh, well, hey, there we go. Hopefully you can see this. Okay, before I fully remove it, I need to make sure we have the exact orientation. Okay. Okay. Let's put the new bushing on. I'm just simply going to hammer it on. I'm guessing a bushing press would be the best thing to use, a proper hydraulic press, but I don't have one of them, so this is the next best thing. Okay, it's looking good so far. That is one new bushing pressed on. So I'm going to move on to the ball joint now. So the lower ball joint appears to be a 17mm nut and a T50 Torx. So I'm going to use the T50 to counter hold the bolt and my impact to whiz the nut off. Like that. This makes things way too easy. Ridiculous. Right. There we are. So there's the bolts. And the new ball joint does come with new nuts and bolts. There we are. And that is the old ball joint. It's hard to show on camera, but it does have a little bit of in and out play, which I can feel by hand. So when it's under load, of course, that'll seem a lot worse and potentially could clunk. So here's the new one. Okay, so it comes with new bolts, nuts, and washers. So okay, so in this case it's not a Torx anymore. So what I can do is counter hold that one and tighten it with the gun. I'm just going to use a ratchet to check they're actually tight enough. That's fine. Not doing it like that again. I've grabbed an 18mm spanner. That's why it's not working properly. That explains a lot. Now this will work. That's the thing about Wheelz Workshop. When we do things wrong, we show you so that you don't make the same mistakes yourself. Also, did I say this already? I'm not a professional. And there we have one new ball joint. Much better. Much better. Okay, so it's now time to replace the Droplink. So it's just a case of removing this 17mm nut here, that 17mm nut there. I already did a Droplink in the previous video, or two actually, on the little Volkswagen Fox. So I'm not going to go into in depth with this. I'm just going to crack on and get it replaced. So, good and bad news. Let's start with the good news. I've removed the old Droplink, here it is, and the boot is way worse than it looked on the surface. You can see it's split right open there, but this ball joint is actually okay. This was the top one. The bottom one, wow. It has, again, you probably can't tell on the video, but it has loads of in and out play. You might have been able to hear that on the camera. It's completely dry inside because the boot's split. And yeah, there's absolutely loads of play in that ball joint. So this was very likely a big contributor to the knocking noises. The bad news is I've gone to fit the new Droplink, which was one of these fantastic Delphi I say fantastic, Delphi Technologies Droplinks, which I thought was a good brand. But I started to do up the bottom one, and I was only doing it with hand tools, completely by hand. It didn't even get very tight, but it started getting looser and looser as I was tightening the nut. So I think the thread on the actual ball joint has stripped. The thread is stripped, so I'm not really happy with fitting it the way it is. It's really annoying. I'm just going to have to go back to the shop and buy another one. So now I've got to painstakingly try and remove it. As you might be able to see, I tried to put another nut on, and to be fair, it's quite tight, but honestly, I'm not really happy with it. So I'm going to take it back off, evaluate, and potentially go and have to buy another one. And I'm not going to be buying another one of those, because even when I've bought the cheapest ball joints before, and I've used power tools on them, no problem. The threads don't strip like that. But this one, honestly, I was just doing it with a spanner when the thread started to strip for this particular nut, which is ridiculous. So I'm going to hopefully return this, hopefully get my money back, and go from there. There's that one off. Yeah, that thread is absolutely knackered. Damn it. Right, I am having to now grind off what remains of the new Droplink. I don't know what was wrong with this. I tightened this one up at the top, actually with an impact first, then by hand with far more force than what happened with this one. I'm assuming the nut was faulty. Maybe the threads weren't really there on the nut, and it just didn't tighten and it just stripped it off. I'm so annoyed with this. I have heard that aftermarket parts are getting worse in terms of quality, but I didn't expect that. So yeah, it could have been my fault really, but I really don't think so, because I was only tightening it with small hand tools. It's not like I had a breaker bar on it or anything, so it shouldn't have stripped like that. So I'm about to just have to grind it off. Wish me luck. It's spinning. What an absolute nightmare, honestly. So, before any of you mention, I know why I was struggling a little bit with the anti-roll bar and having to pry it down with the pry bar to get the drop link to drop in, and it's because I haven't jacked up the other side of the car. I've only jacked up this side of the car, so the anti-roll bar is pushing upwards when it shouldn't be. So that just makes it a little bit difficult. I haven't really left enough room on the other side to jack the car up, but I'm going to try. But for now, we're going to have to revisit this when I've got another drop link, which is so annoying. But catch you tomorrow, I suppose. So that is one drop link fitted, and this time put a spanner on it and I can tighten it up as much as I really can with just a spanner, and it doesn't strip, tightens up nicely. Yeah, I physically couldn't do that up any tighter. So definitely either the nut or the thread on the other one was faulty. This one seems absolutely fine. It's not as pretty as the other Delphi one, but you know what? The quality seems about the same. The only thing I would say, and I will admit this, is the other side of the car wasn't jacked up before, which makes fitting the drop link very difficult because the anti-roll bar is twisted, so it pushes it up. So I was making my life very difficult there. Originally, I really couldn't fit the jack in against the wall over there, and I was kind of just being lazy, to be honest, but I managed to fit it in. And there we are, that's all done, new drop link in, so that's all good. So, time to fit, or refit, I should say, the wishbone, which has a new bushing and a new ball joint. Very exciting. Okay, so here we go. So to help this bushing slide in nicely, I'm going to use a bit of this silicone spray. You're not supposed to use WD-40 or anything on rubber bushes. You're only supposed to use a silicone-based lubricant. So a bit of silicone spray. Because the bushing on the rear isn't as worn as it was before, this might actually be a bit more difficult than it was before. But we'll give it a go. So, as you probably just saw in that time lapse, I've had a small issue. Just to explain, it's very difficult to get the arm back in these, especially when you put a nice fresh new bushing in that doesn't have much play. So if I can try and show you the new bushing there, if I can show you there, it's called a P bushing. People call it a P bushing because it's shaped like a P because it has a little bracket that extends out the top. And as you can see, it needs to sit underneath the other bracket for the anti-roll bar bushing. And that is very, very hard to achieve, making that go underneath that other bracket when trying to wiggle it into position, and also for it not to foul on the hub that's kind of in the way. So you have to sort of like move the hub around a little bit just to get it into the position you want. And it's very, very, very easy to pull the drive shaft out of the gearbox and lose, unfortunately, a bit of gearbox oil. So I will obviously top that gearbox oil back up. That is completely normal to do. You don't have that problem on the passenger side, on the driver's side, but you do have this problem on the passenger side. That's just something to watch out for on this. But other than that, the wishbone is actually in position now, as you can see. Ball joints in, so all the bolts just need putting back in place, and we're nearly there. Okay, I'm back. The GoPro died. So the control arm is now fully installed and all of the bolts are tightened up. Now, in terms of torque specs, there's quite a few contradictions online. I couldn't really find a workshop manual and I couldn't find any solid torque specs listed. And the ones I did find were wildly different and a bit random, to be honest. So I found the ones that sounded right to me, and that's what I've done them all up to. But because they might not be correct, I'm not going to state them here, but I did them up to what I felt was the right torque spec. The only thing I would say is, in terms of the method of tightening, for this bolt at the front here, it's best to jack up the hub like this, using a trolley jack or something similar, and then torque it up to the torque spec that you want to do. And whether that's just, you know, good and tight or whether you actually want to try and do it to a torque spec, that's up to you. Again, this isn't an instructional video as such, but that's what I've done. I've jacked it up and tightened that, and the others I've just done up to what I feel is right, based on what I found. So as you can see there, we've lost some gearbox oil from that drive shaft coming out. So I'm just going to top up the gearbox fluid again. Just this bolt here you remove, and then you just fill up the gear oil there until it drips out. Once it starts dripping out, that's when you know it's full. So that's what I'm going to do now. And once that's done, I can lower the car down to the ground and put the wheel back on. Right, gearbox oil topped off, so just fill it up right there, that bolt. I sprayed the underside with some brake cleaner just to get all the gearbox oil off. We are ready to put the wheel back on. Very exciting. And then hopefully we'll go for a quick test drive just to make sure it has actually resolved the problem. Time for a test drive. Okay, so we're on the first test drive. This is just after doing the front left side, as you've just seen. When doing this work, you need to do both sides, particularly the control arm bushings. You have to replace both sides, otherwise you're going to have really strange steering and your alignment's going to be really out. So yeah, you definitely have to do both sides, but I'm just testing it just to make sure that the noises have gone, and I'm pleased to announce that most of the noises have now gone. So back to the workshop to do the right hand side. Right, as you would have just seen a moment ago, I have successfully removed the wishbone from the driver's side of the car. So this ball joint, thankfully, has no play. That's great. This rear control arm bushing, however, wishbone bushing, whatever you want to call it, has seen better days. It is cracked all the way around. If I can just show you that. If I twist it this way, you see how it's completely debonding almost from the center where it attaches. And yeah, if I twist it that way, you see the splits all the way down here. That is completely split. In fact, the only bit that's attaching this to the actual control arm is a little bit of material here, as far as I can see, and a bit of material at the top here, which doesn't seem to be holding on very well, if I'm honest. Yeah, so that is a completely destroyed wishbone bushing, almost worse than the other side. I would say this is actually worse than the other side. So I will cut this bushing off. Unfortunately, there is a failed drop link on this side as well. The boot is completely split. So I'm just going to cut this bushing off now, and I'll head to the shop to buy another drop link. I'm back from the shop and I have another drop link. I've just gone for a cheap Starline one again from Eurocar Parts because the quality seems fine, honestly. Longevity is not really the concern here. It's just to make it last a little bit longer. But I'm sure these will be fine. The quality actually seems pretty decent. So I'm going to go ahead with that, fit this drop link, refit the wishbone, and I think that will be a wrap for this car then. So you would have just seen in the time lapse that I had a total nightmare with this drop link. I ended up having to cut it, sort of like cut slots into it like that. I couldn't cut it like that, so I had to just sort of like cut slots into it, as you can see, like that. And that loosened the nut off. It was so tight. So cutting those slots loosened it off nicely. So ready now to reinstall the new drop link and the wishbone. We should be on the home straight. So just to explain what's going on here, I'm currently struggling with the long bolt for the rear wishbone bushing that goes through the anti-roll bar bushing housing and has the nut on top. And that's because the anti-roll bar bushing housing, the hole for it isn't lining up. So as you can see, I'm currently shoving a screwdriver in and jacking up the hub to try and wiggle it into the right position just so that the hole lines up, which in the end does work, and I get there in the end. time for the final test drive. So here we are on the hopefully final test drive of the Citroen Xsara Picasso, and I'm pleased to announce that it drives so much better now. There's a lot less clunks. I'll get to why I said less clunks in a minute, but it feels a lot tighter. The steering feels more precise, probably owing mostly to those new wishbone bushes, and yeah, it really has made a big difference to the way this car drives. The reason I say less clunks is because there is still a clunk when you accelerate and decelerate quite sharply. I'm not 100% sure what's causing that. I'm going to try and figure it out in a bit, but it may be a job for another day, as long as the steering and suspension is all safe. If it's an engine mount, maybe we can put that off to another day. So yeah, other than that, the car drives great. The tracking seems pretty straight, which is remarkable. And yeah, it just drives so much better now, which is absolutely fantastic. You may be wondering why I do this, and it's really because there is satisfaction in keeping an old car like this going, keeping it running well, keeping it going for as long as possible. And keeping an older car like this going is really quite good for the environment. Say what you like about electric cars and new hybrids and more fuel efficient cars, but at the end of the day, this car, in terms of its manufacturing process and all the materials that are used, you know, that have to be mined and refined to be able to produce a car like this, most of that is already done. Well, I say most of that, all of it is already done. The car already exists. Whereas with a brand new car, you've got all those materials, valuable earth resources and minerals and whatever that have to be mined and refined, which causes pollution and things like that. This car already exists, so why not just keep it going? I think there's a lot to be said about the environmental benefits of keeping an older car running. But of course, you know, people don't really think of it that way. They see shiny new things, they see that it uses less fuel, they think it's eco-friendly, and in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's really not, especially with electric cars, because, for example, the batteries that are used to produce electric cars, they don't last forever. They will only last, what, 10 years? They will last quite a long time, but they can't be rebuilt like the engine in a car can. And all of those chemicals then have to be disposed of somehow. So yeah, keeping an older car going like this is all right by me. I think it's great. Right, I'm going to call that complete for now, guys. So if you have enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and give the video a like. It really helps me out. And if you have any questions or comments or any suggestions for future videos, please do leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your suggestions and your thoughts. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.